Urban Banshee here, ready for another illustrated book review. I heard about this book and the general premise interested me, or at least what I thought the premise was. I was rolling my eyes by page 2, but there is something I find enjoyable about a bad book, and oh boy, was this bad. I thought I was getting a romance with a villain and a fantasy story. What I got was a bunch of TikToks in written form. That isn't a shot at TikTok. Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maehrer was based on actual TikToks. I'm not sure if I would have picked this book up if I had seen any of the TikToks the author had made beforehand. To put it nicely, they weren't to my taste. If someone picked up this book because they liked the TikToks, they will probably enjoy themselves. I will never mock someone for enjoying a book, even if I would call the book bad. I would be thrilled, in fact, if I got a comment saying my review made someone check out a book I talked about. I don't read so you don't have to. I read and then I can't continue my life until I talk about it. But warning, I have some not so nice things to say about Assistant to the Villain. And I will spoil the book even though it ends when things are finally happening. Book 2 is out at least, so I won't perish waiting for a canceled sequel. Yes, I'm reading book 2. No, I will not do a review for it. I would call the world a generic fantasy setting, except that would be giving it too much credit. It's closer to a fantasy aesthetic board. The anachronisms pile up real fast, and there is no rhyme or reason to any of it. Our main character is Evie Sage, age 23, a currently unemployed commoner. She had a job offer, but then when she saw a poor mom with 3 kids give her puppy eyes, she handed over the certificate for the proof of the job offer, which is dumb on several levels. Jobs don't typically work that way. You can't do an interview, get the job, and then have someone entirely different show up for work. The other dumb reason is it's a job as a maid at a noble's estate. I don't think they are going to be happy with someone bringing their 3 kids to work. But this is really just to show that Evie is a good person at heart, even if she kicks herself about it later. Evie absentmindedly wanders into Hickory Forest, which is bad because the villain is known to lurk in the forest. It's said the villain burned down the fishing village, causing a famine until things would be rebuilt. He is also known to sneak into nobles' homes and steal valuables. Put a pin in this. Evie arrives at a stream and notices that the stream has turned red with blood. The source of the blood is a wounded man. When he notices her, he pins her to the ground and covers her mouth so she can't scream. The king's guards are nearby and he assures her that they will kill both of them if she is caught. Because bloodlust or something. Evie just sighs and says, "This is very typical for me." Well, not this exact situation, but if I told someone about how I ended up here, nobody would think it out of the ordinary. Excuse me while I roll my eyes. Yes, this is the sort of thing that happens to Evie because she does things without thinking. Being a little self-aware doesn't help. It's the friend that never has money because they spend it on stupid shit, and when called out on it, giggles and goes, "Oh, you know I'm no good with money." Evie looks at this super hot, attractive man that wears all black and realizes that he is the villain. Despite every single wanted poster and description of him has him be extremely old and ugly. Put another pin in this. The villain takes Evie with him as he escapes the king's guards. They were after him because they wanted a magical creature he has in his possession. A frog that can understand human speech and wears a crown named Kingsley. The frog uses signs like a Looney Tunes character to communicate. According to the villain, magical creatures are auctioned for a high price. Evie lets slip that she is unemployed along the way, and he gives her a job. End of the prologue. Chapter 1 starts 5 months later, so I'm left wondering what the point of the prologue was. If the story is going to start with Evie getting the job, then I expect to see her adjusting and learning her job. We can then get to know what the villain is like as a character and a boss before he falls for Evie. But fine, setting up dynamics and trying to write Evie learning the ropes may be too difficult of a task. Maybe the first draft had it and it was super boring. So start the book with Evie already working for the villain. It practically does that anyway, just skip the prologue. Chapter 1 starts with Evie noticing that there are several heads on pikes today and sighs to herself. It's important that you know that Evie isn't like other girls. Murder and torture don't bother her. The brand of horror she came across in the day-to-day didn't ruffle her the way it should have. Her need for normalcy had whittled away, bit by bit, since her employment began, but she didn't mind. Look, I picked up this book knowing it had a villain as the love interest. If the story had Evie realizing violence didn't bother her as much as she'd been told it should, or she justified it because of the villain's motives, or hell, if she simply turned a blind eye for a while for the sake of a paycheck, I wouldn't mind. Instead, Evie is an edgy Hot Topic t-shirt slogan. Evie thinks to herself how nice it is that the villain doesn't seem to be expecting her to fail, unlike how all the villagers look at her. I have no idea what she is talking about. She doesn't really interact with any of the other villagers in the entire book, and even when we get her entire backstory, nothing supports this idea of hers. This will be a running theme. Things are just stated, like that makes the world or the characters deep or interesting, but it feels more like an OC sheet from DeviantArt that is a list of traits. That works fine if you're commissioning someone to draw your character, but it doesn't work in a published novel. Evie also thinks about how the villain is morally gray. Spoiler, she thinks about him a lot. That he doesn't hurt innocent people and treats women as equal to men. Basically, not much of a villain. Look, if you picked up this book because you're interested in a villain romance, I think you can handle more than a moody bad boy. The book hints at Evie's past with her thinking about her previous job and a scar on her shoulder that will hurt periodically. She also thinks about how it was done with a magic dagger and that her scar will glow when she's in pain. The glowing never matters, and I quickly grew tired of her vaguely mentioning the scar in this previous job. I think the story was going for mysterious build-up, but all I got was girl who won't shut up about thing that she is upset about but also doesn't want to talk about it. Have I mentioned that Evie is clumsy yet? Because that isn't an overused and obnoxious trait to give your character. Honestly though, I'm way more annoyed by how much and often Evie is thinking about how hot her boss is. It's a villain in the scene. Evie is looking at him and thinking of how attractive he is. If he isn't in the scene, she is thinking about him and how sexy he is. We meet Becky, who is Evie's nemesis, because that's a comedy trope. I understand what the story is going for in theory. It is literally advertised as Once Upon a Time meets The Office. But there is very little office in it. So much of this book is just telling the audience information. Evie is an optimist. Her mother disappeared when she was a kid, so she doesn't let serious matters get her down. And she smiles because she doesn't want her father, who has contracted the mystic illness, to worry, though she wishes she wasn't an optimist. Evie is doing office things at her desk when she hears a loud noise from the villain's office. It startles her so bad she falls off her chair. After hearing her soft ow, the villain exits his office and sends her to the healer. Tatiana is the healer, and she doesn't accept money, she trades in secrets. I swear, this book is nothing but cliches. Besides the fact that I would have thought that Tatiana was paid by the villain, nothing actually interesting is done with the whole trade-in and secrets thing. It's used once for a joke, so Evie can mention a dirty dream she had with the villain. Here was where it was starting to become apparent that the story had a hard time with continuity. First, it is mentioned that Evie bruised her tailbone, but when Tatiana gives her the healing salve, the book says her broken bone slides into place. Of course the villain walks in when Evie is telling her secret about the dirty dream. Awkward. The villain takes Evie to a secluded spot because he needs to speak to her privately. While he is talking to her, Evie is stuck inside her own head and isn't listening at all. She also has the habit of just saying whatever half-formed thought crosses her mind. Have you ever met someone with no filter and the dumbest thoughts to boot? At no point did I find her banter with the villain funny or endearing. Finally, Evie pays attention long enough to listen to the actual reason the villain needed to talk to her. They have a traitor. He knows this because information is getting leaked. She is the only person he trusts enough to look into this. Back home, her dad has made dinner, and even though it is awful, neither Evie or her little sister Lissa complain because it means he is having a good day. Remember, he has the mystic illness, a mysterious illness that has no cure, and is the reason Evie has to work so hard to support them all. POV switch up! Did you want the villain to be mysterious and be able to slowly figure out if he also pines for Evie via context clues? Well, too bad. This is a dual POV book. We get to see things from the villain's point of view, and he is already in love with Evie. His name is also Tristan, with a Y. Not exactly the name I would have imagined for him. Nothing wrong with the name Tristan, but it just doesn't feel right. Whatever, I'll just be calling him Tristan from now on. Tristan has a handful of his employees get a ring of loyalty on them with magic ink. Specifically, only his guards have rings of green that will kill them if they betray him. Evie also has a ring of gold because he couldn't bring himself to use green on her. No one else has these rings. At work, Evie is bothered by a faint ticking she can hear coming from Tristan's office. She goes into his office and finds a bomb in one of the drawers with 3 minutes left. After gawking at it for a full minute, she runs out to the parapet with it. Of course, since she is just so clumsy, she trips, hurting her ankle and sending the bomb flying just out of reach. Tristan arrives just in time to cloak them both in a barrier of shadow magic. In what is supposed to be an intimate scene, Tristan checks Evie's injuries. He takes off her boot to check her ankle, which leads to him picking her up and carrying her. Look, I love a good princess carry scene. Hit that trope just right and I'll giggle like a maniac. But this just isn't it. Evie's non-stop nonsense, verbal and internal, just saps every scene of any sincerity. Evie gets her injuries healed, and Tristan escorts her home. Along the way, she bumps her bad shoulder. Her thoughts imply that she received the injury when her previous employer tried to be intimate with her. She didn't tell anyone because she thinks it is common, and as it was, she was lucky, though it does make her mad. I would have loved for the story to delve deeper into this, as just a whole concept. The only person who doesn't play into this sexist idea and treats women as equals is the villain, allowing the story to be about the label society gives those who dare oppose the status quo. If this is indeed super common, then Evie can rally with others who have been victims of the unfair power dynamic. But it's more to just excuse why she never told her father why she lost her old job and make the audience hate her old boss. Tristan is sorry about what happened and offers to let Evie quit her job and even give her a large severance package. Evie actually likes her job and has the hots for her boss, so she angrily turns him down. Evie's dad isn't at home and is instead out having drinks with his friends. Her little sister, though, skips school and is there. Tristan introduces himself by name, which upsets Evie. She is hurt he told her sister before he told her his name. According to him, his name is on a plaque on his desk. I have no idea if this is true. If it's not, it's a weird lie. But if it is, then I honestly have no real hope for Evie. How do you not notice a name plaque for 5 months? But also, shouldn't he be hiding his real name? Tristan requests that Evie come to a tavern with him. She agrees since it is for work. They are there to see the man who made the bomb, who turns out to be Tristan's brother. But before that, they run into a guy that Evie had a fling with who annoys her and insults her, basically saying that nobody would want to date her, which is where Tristan comes in and scares him off. Which is the appeal of Tristan, I get that. Unfortunately, Evie is here and continues to be herself. Her and Tristan talk a little and Tristan chokes on his drink over Evie admitting she reads spicy romance. When Tristan's brother shows up and literally calls Tristan brother, because that's the normal way to address your siblings, Tristan very nearly just ups and kills him. He only backs down because Evie tells him not to, in front of all those witnesses. Apparently, they have been trying to kill each other for years. I've read this whole book, and this is never really explained. They used to be close, but now they aren't. Malcolm, the brother, says he had no idea the bomb was going to be planted at Tristan's place. He doesn't even know who he sold it to. He was very drunk, and the guy wore a hood. He does remember that the man had glowing blue ink stains on his hands. At work, Evie gets cauldron brew for a coworker named Blade, who's attempting to tame a dragon. Blade asks Evie to go to his room and retrieve a book for him. Evie does and finds the book, Training Magical Beasts for Novices. This means that Blade wasn't honest on his resume. That's when Evie notices a slip for employment for King Benedict, Tristan's enemy. A hand closed around her mouth and Evie froze. Please don't scream. End of chapter. Fake out cliffhangers are a sure way to get me to not take your story seriously. It's Blade, of course, and there was no reason for him to grab Evie. I also wonder what the point of sending her to his room was if he was going to follow her maybe a minute after. Turns out that Blade's dad works for the king and wanted his son to do the same. Instead, Blade has always loved animals and ended up stealing the dragon egg from the king. With no other options, Blade went to the villain and asked for a job while lying about everything. Evie tries to convince him to tell the villain the truth. He isn't keen on the idea and says it's not a big deal. For now, she pockets the slip. Interns know that someone is trying to sabotage the villain, and apparently everybody knows. So much for keeping it on the down low. Tristan takes Tatiana and Evie to meet with the person who made the magic ink. Her name is Clarissa, and she used to date Tatiana. But now they dislike each other. In fact, Tatiana calls her a selfish, horrid little beast who will stomp on your soul and rip your humanity from your bones. Also, she is Tristan's sister. Right away, Claire and Tatiana nearly start brawling when Tristan gets in the middle. Their stories about how they broke up conflict. Claire says Tatiana started working for Tristan, so she threw her out. Tatiana says Claire threw her out first, so she had to go work for Tristan. What is the truth? The story doesn't care, so I guess neither should I. Claire has already spoken with Malcolm, so she knows why they are there, but she doesn't really care. Two things to note here. First, ink is expensive. Not even magic ink, standard ink is very expensive. Second, the gold ink on Evie's finger is from a birthday present. Tristan tells her that whoever bought the bomb bought magic blue ink. The only people she sold that ink to was a widower and a man she didn't realize worked for the king until he used the sigil of the king's guards. Really? Both of Tristan's siblings just sell their wares to literally anyone. Claire asks Tristan to let this revenge thing go, that he needs to stop. We find out that Tristan used to work for King Benedict. Evie asks, when? Before I became what I am now. There was a sharpness punctuating the sentence, like the very idea was painful. A monster, Clarissa snapped, a bitter, wounded expression on her face. Yeah, put a pin in that. Evie tries to tell him that he isn't a monster, but stops short and asks what happened. Tristan, being the great communicator he is, opens his mouth and promptly inserts his foot by saying, I don't see how that is important for you to know, Sage. Of course, hurt and offended, Evie storms off. Later on, Tristan is shown the employment slip for King Benedict that fell out of Evie's pocket. He assumes it's hers. Evie starts to say it's not hers, but stops. Tristan thanks her for proving that even promised trust can be broken. She is so upset that he doesn't blindly trust her that when he asks angrily to explain herself, she says she quits. On the walk home, she is certain her ring mark will kill her. So we have layers of stupidity from her and the story. Normally how you write this scene is you would have Tristan not give Evie a chance to explain herself and fire her. And then she would storm off or something. Or he would say something extremely hurtful that would cause Evie to quit regardless of the misunderstanding. Instead, Evie is just so mad that he would even ask her to explain herself that she potentially commits suicide. Of course, the ink ring doesn't kill her. The next morning, Tristan is pacing his office, upset. He had to go back to drinking his coffee black, his cauldron brew without sugar, since he is worried about his image and Evie always took care of it. He was certain she would be back already with an apology and an explanation. Apparently, the entire office is in shambles without her. 3 interns got in a huge fight because they got assigned to the same cleaning crew. Evie knew all the interns well enough to keep this sort of thing from happening. A shipment of weapons came in, but only Evie had the notes that said which shipment it was exactly. It took 20 employees to open every single crate to catalog what was inside them all. There is also a magic filing cabinet that automatically alphabetizes any document that goes into it. The cabinet is now broken. The A's are where the X's should be, and the L, M, N, O, and P files have been eaten by the magic. When Tristan asks who knows how to fix it, the answer, of course, is Evie. Again with the tropes that I typically enjoy, but are just left to flounder here. People who don't know how good they had it until everything falls apart, or they just took this person for granted, is something I usually enjoy seeing. But here it just feels forced. The book doesn't set up anything to do with Evie being extremely competent. In fact, for something claimed to be inspired by The Office, there's very little Office in this story. I should also say if your entire operation falls apart because one person quits, then that is bad management. Where are Evie's notes about what are in all the crates? How is she the only one who knows that certain interns don't work well together? Evie has only worked there for 5 months. How the hell did Tristan run anything before her? Blade asks Tristan if he can name the dragon and what he should name it. Tristan tells him to call it Fluffy, which is a callback to a joke earlier in the story. Blade also admits that the employment slip was his. Back to Evie, we get a little of her tragic backstory. Her brother died and her mother departed soon after. Okay, so her mom is obviously still alive. Evie admits to her father that she is home because she had a fight with her boss. Her father implores her to apologize, that talking is important, as is being honest, and that he wishes he had been more honest with her mom. Put a pin in that. The full tragic backstory is that after her mother had given birth to Lissa, her magic abilities were awoken. It was a rare and pure magic, the magic of starlight. But the magic seemed to drain every ounce of life from her, and she seemed to struggle with it. One day, her mother took Evie, her brother Gideon, and the new baby Lissa to a dandelion field. There she practiced with her magic, making flowers grow and playing with light. She made a ball of light and told Gideon to catch it. The ball killed him and left only scorched ground left. The mother laid Lissa down next to Evie and disappeared. Back at the office, Tristan is in a bad mood. A fire had broken out because 2 fire pixies were arguing, and of course the only person who knew where the fire extinguisher setups are, or how to use them, was Evie. Tristan had declined being told anything about them because he would just have Evie deal with it. Several crates of jewels that Evie helped plan the theft bereft of can't be logged because she is the only person who can read the appraiser's handwriting. There is a knock on his door and Evie enters. She stammers a lot. Eventually, she gets to the point that it hurt her when he didn't trust her, but she is sorry for the way she quit, and she apologizes. Tristan then apologizes too. "I'm sorry." The apology came out fast, and he was almost certain his voice went up an octave, which was not only mortifying, but enough to make him want to consider the window idea again. "You're sorry?" Sage's jaw hung so low, Tristan wondered if it would catch the dirt from the ground. "Dispense with the dramatics. It's not as if I told you I have a nightlight." Sage's gaze sharpened at his words, and Tristan cursed under his breath. Her wicked eyes gave her away as she rubbed her chin like one of the older magical specialists. "Sir, do you have a nightlight?" Tristan shook his head and rubbed at his eyes with the back of his hand, mumbling, "I don't not have one." The giggle she let out was loud, and at a pitch that should call the birds to the window looking for their brethren, but it was adorable and he hoped she would do it again. "You have a nightlight? For what? Does it burn insects, trying to lure something to its death?" Her words were coming out so quick her mouth could barely keep up. He sighed and shook his head, taking this as his penance. "I use a nightlight for the purpose it was assigned, to make the night lighter." He winced. Gods, that sounded ridiculous. Literally every single conversation they have is like this. But yay, work goes back to normal. In the village square, someone is handing out wanted posters of the villain, and boy does it make him look like an ugly old man. Evie pretends to be afraid and asks for a copy of the posters, because she actually finds it super hilarious. She then asks them what sort of dastardly deeds the villain has done, so she can understand. They say his crimes are too horrendous to speak of. In response, Evie shoots back, "You can't name a single one, can you? Time to pull out one of those pins." In the prologue, Evie already knew that the villain steals valuables from nobles and burnt down a whole fishing village. But now it's common knowledge that even though the villain is a bad guy and has done horrible things, no one can actually name a single thing he has done. It's not even that bad deeds are being pinned on him and he is innocent, it's straight up just that he's a good guy and his name is being smeared. Tristan finds Evie and says they need to go talk to the blacksmith. When they took the collar off the dragon, it had the words "The villain will fall" written on the inside. How did no one notice that before putting it on the dragon? Turns out the blacksmith was Evie's old employer. Tristan asked her why she left, and she just says it was a difference of opinion. We get to find out what really happened. He came on to her, and she declined, so when she went to leave, he sliced her backside with a knife. I honestly don't understand why Evie didn't tell anyone. The story tries to imply that this sort of thing is common, but other than Evie claiming this as the case, there is no evidence it actually is. She doesn't have any friends because she had to quit school and stay home after her mother disappeared. But this is a medieval fantasy. You can't on one hand tell me that the world is extremely sexist like most medieval fantasy, and Tristan is not the norm for treating women like people, and then on the other hand treat Evie like a pariah because she has to be the woman of the house after her mother is no longer there. If Evie had other similar experiences and no one cared when she tried to get help, then it would make sense for her to no longer trust others. Maybe if her boss had only tried to sleep with her and she ran away, I could possibly see her not telling anyone. It would make sense if, in that case, her internal monologue had her unsure if she had let him on. She could even have self-doubts that she only got the job because he wanted to sleep with her. But the guy literally tried to kill her. She had a wound that she couldn't inflict on herself, and she didn't tell her dad or anyone. Since I've read the entire book, I know the real reason she never told anyone, and it really is just for the plot to work. So I'll leave this alone for now. Tristan tells the blacksmith Otto that he is a noble who needs a collar for his newest wild animal, a gyurv. The book spells it G-U-V-R-E, but I think based on the description it's supposed to be a Gyurv, spelled G-U-I-R-V-E. Tristan uses a fake name to talk to Otto, but it's not a lie when he says he is a noble. He bribes Otto so he will talk about the collar for a dragon he made, but of course Otto didn't see the face of the guy who ordered it since he wore a mask. But it was by order of the king, and sent off to the villain's lair since the king knew he had a dragon. Evie then tells Otto that they will not be using his services, which sends Otto into a murderous rage. He tries to kill them when they turn their backs with the same dagger he used on Evie. The magic dagger just being near Evie causes her intense pain in her scar. In what is supposed to be a badass scene, Tristan grabs Otto's hand and breaks it, causing him to blubber and beg. But again, I'm just not feeling it. The buildup wasn't really all there, so it's not satisfying when Tristan goes full villain on his ass. When the dagger is close to Evie, it causes her pain. "You have a death blow in your shoulder," he said. "Do you understand what that means?" It just means if she is hit there again, especially with magic, it will kill her. Was it the dagger that caused it and all hits with the dagger will cause a death blow? Or is it because Otto was trying to kill her when he hit her? A combo of both? No idea. Tristan says they should just kill him, but Evie convinces him not to. Her argument is that it will be traced back to them. I'm not sure how, but even when Tristan says he can make sure it won't be, she still won't budge. The only real reason Otto is left alive is because we need a specific scene at the end to happen. But let's be honest here, it is crazy that Otto hasn't been murdered by someone else by now. He has such a volatile temper that he has twice tried to murder someone just because they bruised his ego. There is no reason for him to know who Tristan really is, so as far as he is concerned, he tried to murder a noble. Commoners in these stories are executed for less. Also, Evie, he was willing to use deadly force on you to have his way. What is to say that he won't, or hasn't done the same to other girls? It's not very boss babe of you to let other girls be his victims since you got away. I'm gonna summarize the next bit. Tristan traps a male Girv. The only reason he wants a Girv is because the king has its mate, a female Girv. The king has had the female Girv for 10 years, but if the male is in danger, the female will know and will be able to escape to save him. In the end, Tristan has both Girvs. It is a whole ordeal. Evie talks with Tatiana and asks about Tristan's past. They are childhood friends, though she played with his sister more, being closer in age to her. When she turned 10, she awoke into her healing magic. For her birthday, her parents threw a huge party and invited a ton of people. She was dragged around and forced to heal people. There were thoughts that she might even be a core healer, something that is mostly myth. A core healer supposedly can heal literally anything, including a person's soul. Tatiana wasn't able to enjoy her birthday until Tristan showed up later and baked her a cake, since she didn't even get a slice during the party. Evie asks what happened with Claire. Apparently she never forgave Tristan for the events that turned him to a villain. Put a pin in that. A map at work goes missing and there are only 3 keys to where it was. Tristan and Evie each have one, but he won't tell her who has the third, just says it doesn't matter. Really? There's supposed to be a traitor among your people, but this doesn't matter. Tristan and Evie end up overhearing some of the interns talking. They are insulting Evie, calling her dumb and a klutz. At which point I put the book down for a minute so I could groan into a pillow. What happened to the entire office falling apart with her being gone for a single day? The fact she saved many people's lives from the bomb? Or that the book states Tristan doesn't kill as many interns since she started? Look, this is the kind of scene you have happen prior to her quitting, where no one knows how much they have started to rely on her, but bam, things go to shit as soon as she isn't around. Evie is just all, I'm used to people talking about me. Boo-hoo! I've been inside your head, Evie. They aren't exactly wrong. But they also mentioned they found a mask with King Benedict's emblem on it, but were too scared to tell Tristan, so no one reported it. And this is why you don't kill the interns. Tristan is giving Evie a ride home when she notices someone wearing one of the King's Guard's masks. Of course, she chases them down, and when she catches them, it turned out to be Becky, her arch nemesis. Evie says, "You're the spy?" Becky says of course not. Tristan collaborates that he knows she isn't the spy. What had happened is Becky believed the rumor that the king has a cure for the mystic illness, and thought she could get information by dressing up as a King's Guard. Becky is the one who stole the map. She had the third key, and she took the mask the interns found. Her grandmother has the sickness. Both Evie and Becky hate the idea of having something in common, so they agree to never discuss it again. The previous night, Evie hadn't been able to go home due to a storm, and their dad had been so sick randomly that he couldn't get out of bed. Lissa was unable to lock the door, so she spent the whole night being scared. A note is left on Evie's desk with an invitation to a party being held by a core healer. She knows it is most likely a trap, but she wants to go in case the core healer can heal her dad. Thankfully, she has a super nice dress she bought on a whim. At the party, she runs into Blade and Becky. Evie and Becky's invitation suggests that they might need a cure, but Blade had a normal invitation and is just there for free food. Turns out the party is being hosted by Tristan's father. He had gotten a letter saying it was from Evie asking for an invitation. Tristan shows up and it is awkward. Since it is a party, of course, we get the obligatory dance between Evie and Tristan. Part of Tristan's tragic backstory is that his dad wasn't home a lot because as a core healer, he had an obligation to travel and heal as many people as he could. Which, yeah, kinda sucks, but lots of people have absent fathers. Wait, I thought core healers were a myth, but there's a core healer that throws parties all the time and goes around healing people. What I think the book means is core healers are rare, which is not the same thing as a myth. Suddenly the party is filled with screaming. One of the gears escaped and is just melting people with its breath. It is just a straight up massacre. Tristan runs off and Evie finds his dad injured. Some blood is trickling out of his mouth, so she rips off a strip of her dress to wipe it. What? not even needing a bandage or to try and stop bleeding. Just, let's rip up this dress for a napkin, pat pat. Which, by the way, ripping fabric is a lot harder than it sounds. I'll usually let this trope slide, but she used it as a napkin. Talk about putting a trope before the story. Evie, Tristan's dad, and Becky are surrounded by the king's guard. Shift to Tristan's POV. Blade is trying to catch the Gurv. Claire, who is also at the party, says she can create a sleeping drought. Tristan gets hit over the head and passes out. Back to Evie's POV. Tristan, unconscious, is dragged to where she is along with a bunch of other people. Evie makes up a lie that Tristan is her husband and he starts to wake up, so she kisses him so he won't immediately start killing the king's guard. Tristan, thinking he is just dreaming, kisses her back. Evie just thinks he must be playing along. The guards let everyone go, and a guard takes Tristan's father away, saying they will get him to a healer. Becky goes along, and when Tristan tries to follow, a guard tells him and Evie to follow him. Tristan attacks one of the guards, and Evie is grabbed. The guards had been told the guard healer was the villain, and since Evie had been with him, they wanted to question her. There is a scuffle, and Tristan kills one of the guards, and the other is knocked unconscious. Becky shows up all scratched up. The two guards that took off with the healer got on two horses, and the guard that was sharing with Becky shoved her off so he could go faster. It's frustrating how inconsistent the king's guards are. Are they just bad guys? Or just guards doing what they're told? Depends on the scene. Thankfully the Gurv was caught by Blade and Claire. The next day at work, we get a super dramatic scene where Tristan briefly thinks Tatiana is the spy, and that is when he hears Evie screaming. Tatiana's door is warded, so he can't just open it. He breaks down the door as he hears Evie scream. Turns out Tatiana was just helping Evie. Since it hurts to have the magic dagger close to her, they just have to hold the dagger close to her until it stops hurting. Claire was helping too, and she has a talk with Tristan. She says she is sorry she helped the king even by accident. She was just distracted that day because one of her regulars, who had lost his wife, had come by to buy his usual blue ink. Each color of ink has a different purpose, I think. Blue acts as a copier. You write stuff down and when you use the ink again, it just automatically writes what has already been written. How that actually works, I have no idea. Do you get to decide what it copies and what it allows you to write? Oh, and you only need a single drop of blue ink to make an entire vial of ink work the same. How much can you dilute it? Claire offers to give Evie blue ink too, since she has to make a new batch for the widower East Marigold. Evie realizes something at this name and leaves with a vial of medicine for her dad and an extra vial of something else. We get to find out that the gold ink binds Evie to Tristan. Get ready, we are nearing the end and it is about to get crazy. The man who Tristan thought was behind everything actually died before the bomb was planted. Claire has a revelation. She says she knew East Marigold was an alias and the man gave his real name by accident the last time. But she swears she didn't know it mattered. That man? Evie's dad. Turns out, Evie's dad had been working for the king all along, and his job as a butcher was just a cover. He had given her purple ink for her new job, which was just red ink with the magic blue ink added. Because Evie kept a journal of literally everything. Shift changes, daily entries, every plan ever. She even took her journal home every day. With the blue ink, her dad could know everything that happened at the villain's lair. Hold up. I was reading, waiting for the reveal of who the traitor was, because I assumed Tristan had a good reason for believing it was a traitor. But you are telling me that it was just an info leak this whole time. And on top of that, Evie keeps track of all the super important evil info in a single journal. A journal she takes home every night, so there is no real reason for this weird blue ink magic. That's not even the end of the crazy revelations either. Otto had offered her dad money in exchange for being allowed to sleep with her. Not only did her dad take the deal, even though he admits later that money was never an issue because he is paid by the king, but he is mad she ruined the deal. He never mentioned the deal to her, so why would he expect her to accept it? He even calls it a marriage proposal later in the conversation, even though it is very obviously not. Evie tells him that Otto attacked her, and his response is, "You always do this." Do what? Honestly, I have no idea what he even means by that. Also, her mom isn't dead. She sends letters asking to be allowed to see her kids. When she gained her magic, she was supposed to work for the king, but didn't want to. And the dad isn't sick. It was an excuse to work undercover. He didn't care that the bomb might kill her, since she was basically dead to him when she went to work for the villain. But not only was the reason she took the job in the first place because she thought they had no money, even though apparently the dad was consistently being paid by the king, but she did quit at one point. Remember that pin from earlier when her dad talked her into returning to her job? I get it to some degree. He is not fully rational and is the bad guy. But he talks like he wanted her to return to her senses and not work for the villain, but actively pushed her to talk it out with her boss when he found out she quit, who he knew all along was the villain. Just whatever. He passes out because she mixed sleeping draught with his medicine, which is when Tristan shows up. Ready for the super tragic backstory? Tristan met the king when he was 19, and a magic specialist could sense he would have magic. The king offered to let Tristan be his apprentice, and Tristan happily accepted. He even helped the king capture the female Gurv. The reason is there are theories that a baby Gurv is a cure-all. But then the magic specialist started acting funny around Tristan, and he finally asked the king why. The king was trying to see if Tristan's magic would be dangerous, and see if the problem could preemptively be managed. But in the end, the king decided that there was no hope, so he threw Tristan in a pitch-black dungeon. He begged for a month to be let go, and was frequently beaten up by the guards, and then his magic awoke. He killed the guards, escaped the dungeon, and decided if the king was going to treat him like a villain, he might as well be one. But all the heads on spikes have just been from people sent to kill him. Evie takes Lissa to the manor so they can live there now, and her father's locked up in the dungeon. But Evie left her super sentimental journal at the house so she and Tristan go walking, when suddenly Tristan collapses. Some kind of magic is holding him down, and a carriage is there. The king and some knights exit the carriage, and Tristan is chained with special cuffs. The king says he needs the Gurv back. Without her mate, she won't produce her venom. Tristan is knocked unconscious. Otto is there, and the king says he can do whatever he wants to Evie before he kills her, but he wants the body when he is done. The king leaves, and 2 guards stay behind to bring back Evie's body. Evie manages to kill Otto, and one of the guards kills the other and silently leaves. Evie goes back to the manor, places Otto's head on a pike, and tells everyone the villain has been captured. She plans to fake her own death. The end. Where to start? First, I hate Evie. Sorry, but I do. I found her obnoxious, inane, and annoying. Her inner voice and her dialogue just had me cringing the entire time. That alone ruined the majority of the book for me. No matter what was happening in the scene, I could never get invested because Evie was there. Not to mention her not like other girls thing was a bit too much. I try not to say this too much, but she reeked of self-insert. Tristan was bland. His motives are a bit undefined, and I never really got full-on villain vibes from him. The prologue had evil deeds he did, but then later in the book, no one can name a single evil thing he has done. It's weird how the king has never revealed what he really looks like, so there are just stories and posters of how old and ugly he is. But despite this, Evie knew who he was right away, and his backstory, lame. He was in a dungeon for a month. Another pin from earlier. His sister Claire called him a monster and never forgave him for what he did the day he became the villain, which was breaking out of prison and killing a few guys, which you could argue was in self-defense. No idea why this also leads to his brother wanting him dead. And even though Claire tried to argue Tristan needs to let this feud go, from what I read, the king is the one who keeps sending assassins to kill him. Obviously, the king is evil, if we go by the end of the book, but dang is this lackluster. I was expecting for the king to be doing evil deeds and just blaming them on the villain. Maybe the evil deeds the villain does do end up being for the greater good, killing slavers, corrupt nobles, that sort of thing. But if Evie is to be believed, the king is a good monarch. The sudden twist of the dad being the bad guy all along was more eye-rolling than shocking. Where's this setup? The little hints that Evie's dad isn't all that great. Have him nag Evie, undermine her feelings here and there. Maybe a little gaslighting. Have him talk up how great Otto is, which makes it hard for Evie to tell him what happened. The world building is bad. No sugarcoating it. There are a handful of pixies and other magical creatures in the background, but they don't feel like a part of a world. Speaking of sugar, good grief, do the characters in the story consume a fair amount of it. Evie is frequently sucking on hard vanilla candies her little sister got her. Edwin the ogre, who invented cauldron brew and lives in the manor, also makes pastries every day. Evie knows what cotton candy is, and Tristan takes his cauldron brew with an ungodly amount of sugar. I know sugar is super common now and in everything, but we are talking about medieval times. Even if it is a fantasy, there needs to be some sort of grounding. The world has rubber, cotton candy, air vents, alphabetizing for paperwork, bombs with timers, night lights, and indoor plumbing, just to name a few. Let me be clear, I don't expect a fantasy story to be historically accurate. I wanted to be consistent in its world building. The reason these things stood out is because the rest of the world isn't fleshed out. It acts like it's a standard medieval fantasy, but suddenly Evie is using a modern faucet. I have no idea how the magic in this world works. Is it elemental? Tristan has shadow magic, and Evie's mom has starlight magic. Healing magic exists, and so does someone who can sense magic that hasn't awoken yet. Otto has a magic dagger that I guess he made himself. He is the one who made the magic cuffs that are put on Tristan. The plot isn't much better. The majority of the book is Evie trying to figure out who the traitor is to just find out it's not a traitor. It's an information leak. It honestly felt like the book had wasted my time. I was led around wondering who the traitor is, feeling bad for Evie having to distrust those she thought were her friends, all for it not to matter in the end. And the poorly handled tropes. I would compare a story to a magic trick. I know it's not real, but I'm here for a good show. Yes, it's all sleight of hand and special props, but if a magician is good, then you can't see the tricks, only the magic. I might even know exactly how a specific trick is done, but the skill can still impress me. A badly done story is like a badly done trick. I watched you palm that scarf. I'm very aware of how badly you shoehorned this kiss scene. So many scenes felt like they were only there to tick off a box. This is the Princess Carrie scene, the you don't trust me scene, and the quick let's kiss the trick the guard scene, and they were all done poorly. But it's also very interesting because of how poorly it was all done. I have a ton of thoughts of why certain aspects of the story didn't work, how the lack of a theme is interesting, how absolutely absurd some of the dialogue was, what I would recommend the story do instead. And at the end of the day, I enjoy a bad book. Like a so bad it's funny movie. If you enjoyed my take on this book, go ahead and subscribe, because I like it when books hurt and I need the validation.